Welcome back, everybody. The COVID-19 pandemic has people staying isolated and working from home is the new normal. Tech companies are feeling the effects of this, including Microsoft. Microsoft Teams, which enables chat, meetings, and calls, soared in March to 44 million daily users. That was up from just 20 million users in November of last year. And Microsoft Skype surged to 40 million daily users last month, up 70% from the previous month. For a closer look at this and much more, let's welcome Brad Smith. He is Microsoft's president. And Brad, it's good to see you this morning. How are you doing?
Very well, Becky. Good to see you. Thank you.
It's good to see you. You know, we're watching the Seattle area pretty closely because you all were some of the first to really see the community transmission of this virus, and we're some of the very first in. It sounds like you might be some of the first coming out, though, too. It's good news to hear that Boeing's going to be restarting some of its production in the area. What are you seeing in terms of how Microsoft is operating and just what you're seeing in the community?
Well, I think you're right. Seattle was one of the earlier places to experience this, at least in the United States. We are on the earlier side, therefore, of coming out of it. We flattened the curve quickly. A lot of this was because businesses brought people home. We at Microsoft brought people home 19 days before the governor issued an order to do so. We appreciate that not everybody can work from home, but it's pretty amazing to see the resilience of our economy and productivity for many companies, for governments and the like. And a lot of it is the technology that we now have today, whether it's the cloud and cloud services, products like Teams that you referred to, the ability to put on your show. And so this is something that we wouldn't have had as a society a decade ago. I think we're also seeing an enormous focus on the use of data to combat COVID-19. We're working with public health authorities, whether it's locally, nationally, or globally with the World Health Organization, both to identify the trends, support them in the decisions they're making, move hospital supplies and capacity. So this is a tech-based, resilient economy, not completely, obviously, for all the reasons you're talking about, but to a far greater degree than would have been possible, say, 10 or 20 years ago.
How much of these changes in the way we work do you think are lasting after we find a cure or a vaccine for COVID?
I think there's probably two things that we can say about this. First is, this has really accelerated the ongoing digital transformation of the economy, not just of the United States, but of the world. And I think there's a greater acceptance of sort of almost remote everything. We'll see, I think, more people working together in a variety of collaborative ways. We'll see more people participating in meetings with the kind of technology we've now taken for granted. I think this also reflects a resurgence of the laptop, if you will, because after a decade of almost constant focus on the phone and the smartphone, I think we're discovering that we really do need other computing form factors. And at the same time, I think most of us really do like to see other people. We like to leave our homes. We'll welcome the opportunity to sit down in a room and look in people's eyes across the table. So I don't think we're all just going to stay at home for the rest of our lives, but there will be an acceptance of a broader range of work habits, and we'll see it all come back together that way.
Hey, Brad, I know the reason that you're with us today is to really talk about a new planetary computer that you all are launching that's going to be tracking data about the environment from around the globe. And it seems like maybe it's a weird timing for an announcement like that until you consider that biodiversity loss and wildlife trade are actually making pandemics like COVID-19 more likely to happen more frequently. So tell us what you all are doing on that front.
No, thank you. The obvious issue of the year is COVID-19, but I think the issue of the decade is and will remain the sustainability of the planet. And that's why we started this year with a big step forward around carbon, committing as a company that we would be carbon negative by the year 2030. And then we stuck to our guns. We followed that this week with an announcement around biodiversity. We really think that sustainability issues require constant ongoing action in four areas: carbon, biodiversity, water, and waste. And the connection to biodiversity is this: we're all, as it turns out, dependent on the other species on the planet. If an insect species becomes extinct, that can affect every aspect of the food chain up to what we rely on as human beings. And the biodiversity of the planet has been under threat, just as the carbon issue has put the planet under threat. We're seeing record declines in terms of the number of species. That in turn is dependent on access to wetlands, to coral reef, to forests, trees, the use of land. So we stepped forward this week with a new initiative in this space that includes what we call a planetary computer. We really have to map all of the Earth's surface, understand what is there, the rise, or unfortunately, principally the decline in biodiversity. We need governments to do this around the world. We're going to need national ecosystem assessments and strategies simply to preserve what we have and hopefully to restore biodiversity in many places.
Hey, Brad, it's Andrew Sorkin here. Quick question for you about climate and what business is trying to do, given what's happening to our economy and really the damage it's going to do to so many businesses. How do you think about businesses going forward and investing in things like this? You have a huge balance sheet. Most companies these days are going to be challenged for some period of time. How does that change the equation for all of this?
I think it's a great question, Andrew. Look, not everybody can afford to do the same thing, and I think we have to be extraordinarily sensitive to that. But those of us who have the stronger balance sheets, I think really do benefit by focusing both on the crisis of the day, but also the opportunities and the challenges of the decade. And at Microsoft, we are in the fortunate position of being able to do that. We're certainly not alone. And I do think that those of us who are able to invest for the longer term, both specifically for the remote technologies that are going to power our future, but also to address things like climate change, are going to be happy that we did. And we put $1 billion at work in January, $1 billion to invest principally in new carbon removal technologies and the like. And I think in the year 2030, hopefully COVID-19 by then is going to be a memory. It's not going to be the thing that we wake up and talk about every day. But I'll bet carbon and sustainability and biodiversity still will be. So anytime we can address the short term, plan and invest and act for the long term at the same time, I think that's the right combination.
The other question I just wanted to ask you is, early last month in March, right in the beginning of this COVID-19 challenge here in the United States, and it was a press release that I think got missed or at least didn't get a lot of attention. Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, stepped down from the company's board. And I was hoping you could comment on what that might mean in terms of the impact you think on the company and sort of how investors should think about that.
Well, the good news for us at Microsoft is the relationship with Bill is very deep. So he doesn't come to our board meetings 4 times a year, doesn't participate in the board calls, but he's very much connected to the company. He remains somebody who connects with us on technology issues. This week, I've heard from him on both technology issues and sort of remote interactivity, the kinds of things we're talking about here, as well as COVID-19, what he's seeing around the world, what we're seeing around the world, what businesses should be doing, what governments need to do. He still lives less than a mile away. He's a neighbor, among many other things. So I think what we've really always benefited from in terms of Bill's engagement is his intellect, the breadth of his curiosity, the depth of his understanding of issues, and we're looking forward very much to continuing to do that. I know that's true for Satya Nadella as our CEO. I think it's true for all of the senior execs at the company.